own in-game on a PC starting at $59 with NZXT. Welcome to NZXT Flex! NZXT with no string attached.
Combined outright, we can also do a small version or flex place where get one of these small monthly
Here's Johnny.
That's not you can literally get one of these PCs for 1 month and then win a Fortnite tournament or something and have enough money to buy your own PC.
We brought you this video with the new limited edition 2024 Disappointment PC t-shirt on store.gamersnexus.net. Like a band tour date shirt of never-ending disappointment, this shirt features a brand new design approach for us. It uses a dithered dot pattern at the bottom of a waterfall of green oxidation on the front for fading effect, just like how Intel CPUs are faded. The back of the shirt has each of the major disappointments this year, including a CPU-shaped 0 in 2024. Intel makes multiple appearances this time, with EK, ASUS, and NZXT as runners-up. The front features a reprised FE hourglass design, this time broken, filled with rust and oxidation, and helmed by Intel's nightmarish CPU disaster. The components on the front are overgrown, to represent a hopeful version of our dystopian megacorporate future. To support our testing efforts and consumer advocacy going into 2025, visit store.gamersnexus.net and grab one of these shirts in comfortable 100% cotton or in tri-blend. They're in stock and shipping now. Thank you for your support as we go into next year. This year had some excellent launches, like the AMD 9800X3D, helping close out the year with a really strong CPU. The meshless AIO that we reviewed, with its unique cross-flow fan, was actually a pretty good case and innovative. There was also the Intel Battlemage B580, where all of us were on the edges of our seats trying to see if Intel's GPU division would live to see another day. And it looks like they probably will, because this was a good launch. The Haven case, the HS420, had excellent engineering and build quality. This case came together extremely well. There were good things that happened this year, actually a lot of them. But we're not here for that. We already recapped the best things of the year. We have 3 whole videos on it that we put out in the last couple weeks, so you can check those out if that's what you want. What we're here for is all of this stuff. And then we ran out of tables. Otherwise, there would be more stuff.
The Silicon Desert.
The year started out slow. It started with just sort of bland GPUs. The Super Series, they weren't that super. They were kind of lame. The 7600 XT followed that up, strapping a bunch of VRAM onto a card that really can't do anything with it. And then there was AMD's misconfigured STAPM, which is an acronym no one remembers on a CPU that also nobody remembers. CableMod had its melting adapter issue where it actually issued a full recall for these. And then we get to the actual disappointments for the years. All of this so far is just sort of standard. It's run-of-the-mill. It wouldn't have been a big loss if it fell. It's disappointing, but it's not truly what makes this series what it is. The MSI Claw helps to start that. Ew. It's squishy. So the MSI Claw launched and it failed. And then we get into the collapse of EK water blocks. ASUS scamming us with their warranty process in what became a multi-part series, including a sit-down interview in our series of sit-down interviews with very uncomfortable executives. And then the Intel instability issues on the 13th and 14th gen really started blowing up, with some of Wendell's investigative work kicking that off.
Here's Johnny.
Intel had multiple generations of products malfunctioning from major degradation issues, something that's still happening today to CPUs that started degrading prior to the multiple rounds of BIOS updates. In other disappointments, we had multiple companies expose their warranty servers publicly. Zen 5 caused absolute chaos at launch. A $5,000 computer from Corsair a case from Corsair, and a rental computer with the dystopian future set by a CEO who can't even say the words, "We messed up," without 2 cuts in 3 words.
I want to acknowledge that we messed up.
But ultimately, the big name executives think they set the stage for what's going to be talked about. So let's just see what they thought we'd be talking about for this year.
AI, 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 AI,
AI. Wow! We'll start the recap with NVIDIA, which hopefully won't disappoint us this January. But for 2024, they did. The Super Series started us off. And looking back at the year in its entirety, somehow these cards, they no longer seem quite as disappointing as some of the other launches. Lame, yes. And in that sense, by extension, disappointing. But not quite as bad as what we'll get to later. The 40 Super Series in general is sort of best summed up by, what was that word we used in our review? Meh. But it was so boring and lame that in our 4080 Super review, we didn't even publish individual game charts for the benchmarks. We published this chart showing the 4080 versus the 4080 Super, telling you, unlike NVIDIA and AMD with the RX 7600 XT launch, we're not going to waste anyone's time with bullshit today. The answer is 1 to 3%. We spent 20 hours testing and validating that behavior, and now we can produce our 1-sentence review, which is 1 to 3% better. The 4070 Super joined the 4070 in what turned out to be a little bit of a confusing launch. Both of them existed at the same time, but it was the least lame of the 3. And actually, some of our commenters summed it up the best. This commenter wrote, quote, "Pretty good specs for a $400 GPU. It is $400, right? Right? And then there was the 4070 Ti Super, which is a name. And that is the order of the suffixes.
Only gamers know that joke.
But the best thing that came out of the Super Series launch in general was selfishly just on our side, where we got to explore some new testing methodology and try to advance some things. So we played around with the concept of frames per joule or joules per frame, depending on how you look at it. And this commenter gave us the brightest moment of the 4070 Ti Super review. Quote, "Joules per frame means that you can also measure calories per frame, which means that you can also measure hamburgers per frame, which means that you can also measure pizzas per second as frame rate." But the Super Series wasn't the only boring launch at the beginning of the year for GPUs. We also had, and we'll come back to Ubi subscribed, the AMD 7600 XT. They're refreshing it with the Super Series, and AMD's got the 7600 XT coming out tomorrow. I don't think I get to go home tonight or tomorrow night, but we'll get them done. In what was one of our funnier thumbnail poses and more direct and helpful thumbnail texts of the year, we found the 7600 XT to simply not be worth it. But these were mostly just, again, boring, sort of lightly disappointing, like an appetizer of disappointment. Let's move on to the truly disappointing stuff. In hardware news this year, we read multiple stories about Ubisoft's obsession with moving gaming to subscriptions, saying that you should just get used to it. And Ubisoft recently found itself in controversy for statements about subscription models in video games and for video game purchasing. We'd love to read the Forbes article on it, but we couldn't find the article on this page, so we went to PC Gamer. We couldn't find the article on that page either. The short version of what happened is Ubisoft's executive said this, quote, "One of the things we saw is that gamers are used to, a little bit like DVD, having and owning their games. That's the consumer shift that needs to happen. They got comfortable not owning their CD collection or DVD collection. That's a transformation that's been a bit slower to happen in games. So it's about feeling comfortable with not owning your game." The company's stock price has fallen 48% since January 1st, as of this writing, to $2.63 per share from a little over $5 per share. Ubisoft has been Ubisued for what the firm says is duping customers, and the company announced plans to shut down its brand new game, X Defiant, killing the online service title within a year of its launch while depressingly unlocking all of its content. And maybe Ubisoft would find more success if it added loot boxes and gambit mechanics to its games. Probably make a lot of money doing that. But now we move to the real hardware stories, which we'll skip a few and jump to the MSI Claw. When it first was launching, we had asked for a review sample only because it wasn't available yet in the US. And MSI said, sure, no problem. And then it later said, actually, we won't be able to get one to you for a few months. We're not entitled to review samples. That's totally fine. So I replied and said, no problem. We'll go to Taiwan and buy one. At this point, the company immediately sent us a sample that had been tampered with and pre-benchmarked. We still bought one in Taiwan though, so we used that for our review instead since it was retail, new in box. No amount of tampering though could fix a product that ultimately just sucked. Our conclusion for the Claw review was pretty simple. I can't really say it much better today than I could back then, so here it is. There's no reason to settle for good enough when better is cheaper. The Claw was an impressive feat of inadequacy. Not only was Intel's GPU solution half-baked and its drivers buggy, but MSI's software was broken and unresponsive. Its $800 price tag also made it instantly uncompetitive against a market filled with good handheld gaming solutions that had better performance, better battery life, more stability, and better prices. In no world would that Claw have ever made sense. And what made it funnier was when I did buy one in Taiwan and when the store clerk couldn't understand why I possibly would want an MSI Claw.
在这里很多人买这个吗？你今天听说过这个吗？
有听过，有看过，但没有看到有人买过。
Okay.
You are first.
One of our viewer comments summed it up appropriately and said this: store clerk, why would you buy one? Me. My job is to become disappointed. Accurate. The EK story this year was wild. It was one of the biggest investigations we've ever done. They appear both in April for EK's collapse and in September for EK going downhill. And there was like one in the middle somewhere. But EK, the story started out as the company not paying its contractors or suppliers, to which the company effectively responded, basically, well, yes, that's true, but we do pay our employees. And then it stopped paying them too. EK also held threats of jail time over people's heads for talking about not being paid. And the deeper we dug into the EK story, the more intriguing it was. We made this actual red-string map and eventually found a number of questionable ties and seemingly endless drains on resources to friends of EK executives rather than paying its own staff or suppliers. EK's bank accounts were more recently frozen, with the Slovenian government stepping in to ensure employees were actually paid. And more recently, EK's Edvard Koenig posted a video saying, no, seriously, this time we've fixed it.
At EK, our mission has always been to serve our community, our loyal customers, B2B partners, and suppliers with integrity.
I don't know, maybe they sprayed perfume on the rotting fish head or something, but they say they've fixed it. And EK's former CEO of EK Americas, Kat Silberstein, has since departed EK Americas and gone to form BitsPower Americas. Good. Maybe we'll follow that one up later. And then we get to ASUS scamming us when we were trying to use their warranty this year. We weren't even trying to nail them for anything, they just sort of did it themselves. We accidentally discovered that ASUS was claiming customer-induced damage, or CID, for things as small as a literal microscopic pinhole of so-called damage on devices. And then it would use that to charge customers for repairs which would be totally unrelated so that they could then get money even though they should be fulfilling a warranty. In our situation, ASUS demanded that we pay nearly $200 for a defect that is covered under warranty and is caused by ASUS because... Where is it? There it is. Because of this. Can you see it? If I could just have, I'll hold it really steady. If I could just have the editors zoom in like 10,000x in post, and you still can't see it. But we have microscope shots of it, and that's what caused the problem. In its emails to us as customers, ASUS then threatened to send the device back disassembled if we didn't accept what felt like an extortion charge. We had hundreds of viewer emails about the same practices from ASUS, not just for the Ally, but like everything that ASUS makes. And we actually are still getting some today, but a lot of it has slowed down. It seemed likely ASUS was breaking some laws. And because of that, we recruited an outside lawyer to help explain some things to us, Vincent Augusta, and then we brought in Nathan Proctor from PIRG, or the Public Interest Research Group, to help explain warranty laws and consumer rights. He was recommended to us by Louis Rossman, certainly whom you all are familiar with. So it was great working with all three of these people on this piece, and here's some clips from it.
I don't think it was the right thing to do, and I think I think they have some real exposure here.
So one thing that you can start with, one way of categorizing a situation where someone is making an offer to sell unnecessary services or exploiting someone based off of price, you can categorize a situation like that as fraudulent.
ASUS eventually posted a statement saying we were confused. Just kind of an odd precursor to the echo that we would experience later with NZXT, saying that we were confused. Anyway, we set up an interview with ASUS at Computex in Taiwan, and it was one of the most tense discussions of my career.
The sentence is, currently we perform a full analysis of devices sent for RMA and send customers a comprehensive list of available repairs, free and paid, in our messaging to customers. Is that a lie?
On the positive side of this, we were able to come to some agreements, or rather sort of get ASUS to agree to things that we'd brought to them as terms going into the interview. This is why when we do these interviews, when we're the ones who are leading the story, it helps because we can normally go in with a set of sort of reasonable demands that the company might actually agree to. In this situation, because we were already working on it so long, we had some things we're pretty sure ASUS would agree to, and they did. So that was a positive. ASUS made lots of promises on how it intended to improve. We published them on our website, gamersnexus.net, which is free of any third-party ads. And in some instances, we've been able to directly see people through the new steps to get their support actually fulfilled. So that was nice to see. Anyway, ASUS probably wasn't the worst handling of a major screw-up this year. That would go to maybe Intel. The Disappointment Tour shirt is completely covered in Intel references this year. We have Intel's instability, into Intel needs help, into Intel oxidation, then it's Intel again, and then in October, yep, still Intel. At the end of last year, Intel published its marketing materials calling AMD CPUs snake oil. That was a good move. This year, issues relating to widespread instability on Intel's 13th and 14th gen CPUs came to light in what's probably the biggest serving of karma we've seen yet in this industry. These issues ended up being multifaceted. Wendell's research dug into enterprise solutions providers encountering high costs as they tried to understand instability.
Linux is like, I don't know, and it turns off the P core and you lose 2 threads. It is a crash dumpster fire.
So I saw a comment on Reddit that said, GPU VRAM limitation. How could that be?
Yeah, it's got to be a game bug, right? No, not so fast there, Chuckles. That's actually a CPU problem.
Yeah, Chuckles. Our own led to a separate issue, which was one of oxidation as part of Intel's fab process.
Thanks, Steve.
And in a bombshell for Intel, both were true. Intel ended up admitting to oxidation of its early silicon, although it kept changing its story in its public postings. It didn't post the affected serial numbers, how many might be affected. It gave really no indication at all as to how you might determine if your unit would have been in the batch of CPUs experiencing oxidation problems. The company also used our questions in a way that felt like it was trying to get in front of us, because it posts responses to them publicly rather than responding to us directly. Some of Intel's partners noted 50% failure rates in machines, while other developers, even to this day, are still noting failures. That's after Intel's various BIOS fixes, as any CPU which began to degrade is not able to be retroactively fixed. That is direct from Intel. They have said as much. Intel followed this up by launching Arrow Lake. As if all of that weren't enough, Intel followed all of this by laying off CEO Pat Gelsinger.
Wow, what a year!
Intel has unfortunately gotten rid of the good people on the CPU PR team who used to handle it. They're gone. They've either departed in the wave of voluntary departures, or they just, for whatever reason, don't handle CPU PR anymore. And so now what we're left with is a team which has a track record of lying to us that we have published, and This is very concerning for Intel's CPU side. It behaves totally different from the GPU side, and we're not sure what that's going to mean for Intel in the next year, but it's probably not good if there's any kind of correspondence at all where we need an answer. So we'll see what they do. It's really disheartening to see, though, where the good people who handled stuff properly and recognized that what's, again, good for consumers is naturally good for marketing, they don't get to do it anymore. Corsair landed sort of in the middle of the disappointment tour this year. They have the pre-built down here, and then they have the 6500 series cases. But compared to ASUS and Intel, it feels almost sort of innocent. You pay attention, Corsair. You take this and you melt it, and then you shape it into things that go on these little squares. The company sold an i9-14900K pre-built that performed equivalently to an i7 because of the power configuration and the thermal design, and that system was called, this is the Corsair ONE i500. It's terrible. Unfortunately, and this is why this section's short, just a couple weeks ago, Corsair sent out a statement to us saying how they're fixing or planning to fix this problem and what their steps are long-term and short-term. And those included full refund options for people who bought the system and partial refund options for people who want to apply basically a lower power setting but still keep the system, and because you're running at lower than what was sort of advertised, they're giving a rebate. Corsair also launched its 6500 series of cases this year, which unfortunately exhibited a major lack of attention to detail, bolted on afterthoughts, and flimsy panels that didn't reflect the quality of a case selling for over $200. And so it wasn't a great year for Corsair, but again, you look at these shortcomings like, oh, it's just the hardware that sucks. It's not like the entire ethos of everything they do. And for that, we move to NZXT. Flex! NZXT was the biggest disappointment this year. It was renting computers and at what we thought was predatory pricing. Even in its not apology post, it admitted to basically falsely advertising its product. Its inaccurate advertising included not only NZXT's own first-party ads, which it retconned after our video, but also its partner ads.
And if you think about it, Carter PCs did make a video about it. You could literally get one of these PCs for 1 month and then win a Fortnite tournament or something and have enough money to buy your own PC.
And predictably, NZXT followed up by saying everyone's confused, and they took a losing play from ASUS's losing playbook to respond to everything. In the same post, when they responded, they both admitted to inaccurate advertising while also accusing partners of being the cause for it in the NZXT video. And despite NZXT making the same statements on its own website that it later changed after we published, it was trying to sort of, it seemed like, push it off on these random influencers. And we had actually preempted this in what became our most replayed clip of the year. If NZXT tries to come back and say, oh, it's just the affiliates who did this, we have no control over them. First of all, NZXT, you're saying the same shit, so shut the fuck up. To top it all off, the building we filmed in front of for the beginning of that video was driven into by not one, but 2 cars within about 24 hours of us filming there. And first of all, that was before our video went up. Secondly, it wasn't me. And thirdly, I guess those guys weren't happy with the interest rate on their loans. Bizarre consequences of chance aside, NZXT's rental rates remain exorbitantly high, and we believe the company is still lying in its marketing as recently as 2 weeks ago. We've been saving the evidence as we see the discrepancies on the website. There were a lot of things we didn't spend a lot of time on in this video, and most of those where they were disappointed enough to maybe qualify, but not enough to get a lot of attention. It's because the companies had some form of response that gave us a little bit of hope, kind of like Corsair's i500 thing, where you look at it, it's like, okay, this is good. There are times when companies actually will do something with the information that is presented, and whether that's because they feel like they have no choice or because they genuinely care about their customers, at the end of the day, what matters is that they are making changes. And this is actually something that Gordon has spent the last couple of years training me in, which is how to try and get an outcome that is actually useful for the consumer in addition to complaining online. It's something that I think anyone who does this kind of work has always struggled with, something that he was very good at, and so I've been able to learn from him. But we discovered that AMD's APUs, as an example, that it launched were misconfigured to obey skin temperature awareness protections that are intended only for use in mobile devices. The company later released a fix for this issue following the publication, and they actually had a good resolution. It worked. CableMod went in front of everybody and recalled its own burning cables after it was already offering fully paid for replacements of video cards for people who suffered from burned cables that CableMod made. This was already a good handling to a situation that a lot of companies would have tried to sweep under the rug. This led us to running a full deep dive failure analysis of the messy 12-volt high power standard, and the company has continued to openly communicate with us about its resolutions and what it's trying to do moving forward to get things right. So that was nice to see. Trikes launched its first case. Most build quality and assembly issues we've ever encountered. And then afterward, after a really kind of messy launch, it issued a statement to us with its plan to improve the product with a lot of steps that sounded pretty promising. And we haven't seen those fully enacted yet, take some time, but it was nice to see a reception where they actually want to improve. Zotac had a publicly exposed upload bucket where you could Google search customer and other business information. The company closed this hole after we reported it to their B2B customers. That was also nice to see. This was actually a viewer-reported issue where the viewer discovered the vulnerability, pointed us towards it, and then we tried to get it fixed. MSI had over 600,000 records, years upon years of warranty and customer RMA information publicly available, again, just through a simple Google search. Also, once again, a viewer reported this to us, and we were able to replicate the issue. We disclosed it to MSI, and MSI resolved the issue after we reported it to them. So, although sometimes it feels like a never-ending train wreck in this industry, and that is part of the fun, it's nice that companies will institute change, whether that's out of genuine concern or out of simply being required to. I was talking to Louis Rossman actually today before filming this, and he noted that one of the things that for him is a lot of fun is the fact that it's a giant clusterfuck. I mean, it's Louis. Anyway, we have a lot of big plans for 2025. We're continuing the investigative series. We're continuing all the reviews. In terms of sort of big changes, I got the fan tester running. The first content, the data is fully collected. I have like one more test. I'm gonna go next door and run, but fully collected. We're putting that video together right now. So it's gonna be one of our first videos for this year. I'm really excited about it. It's just sort of a beginning to the fan testing and setting the groundwork and experimenting with it, stuff like that. So that'll be really fun. We have the usual case cooler reviews, continuing with some small iterative improvements to those. We just relaunched all that testing last year, so not a major overhaul, but the sort of ongoing improvements. And then GPU reviews got a massive overhaul just recently for ARC, and we're deploying that for the 50 series when it launches, and whatever else is coming out, maybe RDNA 4 or something. So, and then finally, we're gonna keep publishing our video stuff in written format to the website. So if you ever wanna just go see something archivally, you don't wanna dig through YouTube, then you can check out gamersnexus.net. It has no third-party ads whatsoever, and it loads stupid fast. Wendell built it, and not having third-party ads helps with that. And we're going to keep publishing stuff there. We've been making a big effort in that the last year. If you haven't checked it out in a while, you should check it out, because almost everything we've reviewed in the past year or 2 years actually now is up on the site. So, all right, that's it for this one. It's a lot of fun, as always, doing these recaps. It is nice that there are some positives in addition to all of the entertaining negatives, and it's going to be a packed January. There is a non-stop launch of hardware this month. So check back regularly and come back for the fan testing content, because like I said, it's one of the first videos we're doing for this year, and it'll be a lot of fun to try something new. So thanks for watching. Go to store.gamersnexus.net to grab a t-shirt like this one. These are our limited Disappointment Tour shirts. They help directly fund our testing going into the next year and establish us for what we want to do next in our series of reviews and investigations. Or you can go to patreon.com/gamersnexus to throw a few bucks our way. Thanks for watching. We'll see you all next time.